Hello and welcome to my review of the latest Christopher Nolan film, Dunkirk, which at the time of recording is currently in cinemas. First of all, I'd like to apologise for my new surroundings. This is only temporary. The room I usually record in has currently got builders in, and I was just going to wait them out and wait a couple of days and then make this video, but I want to strike while the iron's hot and talk about Dunkirk because it's really made an impression on me, and I'd really like to share my thoughts with you sooner rather than later. So, as I said, Dunkirk is the latest film from Christopher Nolan, the director who's given us films like Memento, the Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, a very well-known filmmaker. This is his first historical film, and as far as I know, his first film based on true events. And the topic he's chosen is the evacuation of Dunkirk during the Second World War. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, the evacuation of Dunkirk occurred early on in World War II, before the Americans had joined the Allies, and basically the Germans had conquered France despite British and French resistance, and there was 400,000 British troops stuck in France on the beach of Dunkirk trying to get home, and every time the British sent ships to come and carry them home, they were getting sunk. The Germans were firing pot shots at them, planes were coming overhead dropping bombs. It was, there was this entire army trying to get home in order to defend Britain because France had fallen. And this is a real historic event, and basically what happened was these men were stranded, and eventually civilian boats crossed the channel to pick the men up and bring them back home. I feel that's not really spoilers. This will be a spoiler-free review, but that's essentially the overview of the event that took place. It was a huge evacuation, and this is Nolan's adaptation of it. The film is essentially told from three different perspectives. You have the perspective that follows the troops on the beach, waiting to be picked up and kind of watching everything going on around them as, Germans are firing pot shots at them, planes are dropping bombs overhead, and they're desperately trying to get back home. Then you have the battle in the air, which follows Tom Hardy's character. He's a pilot, part of a squad trying to defend the British troops. And then the third perspective is from a civilian father and his son and his deckhand who are sailing their boat across the channel to try and help evacuate the British troops. Now, I feel like this perspective really works for Dunkirk because usually with many war films you follow like a squad of soldiers who you get to know and you see everything from their point of view. But what I thought was really interesting about Dunkirk is that several times throughout the movie you see events from several different perspectives. So, at one point in the film, there'll be an explosion that you'll see from the point of view from the ground troops. And, they won't know what it is. It is unexpected to them. As the audience, you don't know what it is. And, you feel as bewildered because of it as the soldiers. And then the narrative will shift, and perhaps you'll be following Tom Hardy's character and you'll see that the explosion was caused by him shooting down a German plane, and it Dunkirk, even though it's quite a very tight film and the story isn't complicated, it's just about an evacuation essentially. It's like it starts off with these threads that go throughout the movie and then tie in together, and I thought that was really very clever, and the way it's put together is very good. This is, it's not Pulp Fiction, in the way that jumps around, but I like the way that it opens questions up and then slowly answers them as the film progresses. Dunkirk has an incredibly strong cast. You've got Cillian Murphy, you've got Mark Rylance, Tom Hardy, Kenneth Branagh, Harry Styles, who incredibly is actually very good, I thought. And I feel like this cast is really what helps make the film as strong as it is. It's great in terms of its writing and directing, but I think a weak cast could possibly have hindered the film, but that's not the case with Dunkirk at all. As I say, I really don't want this to be a spoiler review, so I can't go into detail so much, I feel. But I feel like every actor really embraces their role. And I particularly want to give a shout out to Tom Hardy. As I say, he plays a fighter pilot, and throughout the whole film, Tom Hardy, he always seems to have something over his face in all his films these days. But obviously as a fighter pilot, where he's wearing the kind of more old-fashioned pilot's gear, he has a, thing over his face. And you can hear his voice over his comms channel, but most of his face is covered, except for his eyes. And I really want to give props to him, because obviously as an actor, when you're acting, your facial expressions are so important, but Tom Hardy's face is covered up. But I felt his emotion really came through via his eyes. You know, when he's like trying to line up a shot, you see his eyes like focusing on the target. You know, towards the end of the film, as things begin to kind of unfold, you see him like looking around his cockpit, and you know, his recognition of things going on below him. I felt like, you know, it seems strange to say that an actor, you know, who has 90% of their face covered up is good at displaying emotion, but I feel like Tom Hardy did a cracking job. And the way he delivers his lines, he's, you know, as a pilot in wartime, he's very professional, and you know, he's not panicking and stuff, but at the same time, you know, he does this thing with his voice where you could hear a slight strain at times when things are tense. You know, I think he did a really great job. I mean, every actor in this film I thought did a really good job, but I especially enjoyed Tom Hardy's performance. I also thought Mark Rylance as a civilian boat worker going to aid the soldiers, he did a fantastic job as kind of an older man entering this war and seeing young men dying. You know, I think he really had a lot of gravitas to that. Yeah, as I say, everyone was excellent. I don't think there was a bad performance in it, but Mark Rylance, Tom Hardy, I think were definitely the standouts. If you're going into this film expecting something like Saving Private Ryan, or something very bombastic like Pearl Harbor, if you're expecting massive gunfights and, you know, explosions everywhere, then this really isn't the case. Of course there are explosions and there are, you know, there's shooting and such. This isn't a film about battle. You have to remember, this is a film about an evacuation, about soldiers trying to get away from the battle. And I feel like this film is so tight. It's only an hour and 45 minutes long, which I think is really to its credit. There's no wasted scenes. There isn't fluff. You never hear like a soldier kind of go like, "Oh, my wife is pregnant, and you know, I hope I get her." It's just, it feels like you are just watching this event unfold as it did. It's different to a lot of war films in that you're not really expected, I think, to become too invested in the characters' lives. You're more invested in their role in this evacuation. As I say, you know, there isn't classic setups like, my wife's just had a baby, or, you know, I hope I get home to see my father. Many ways, it kind of felt like I was kind of a tourist in a way, like watching this historical event unfold. And it was, you know, when soldiers are really going through something like this, they're not, you know, giving their story and stuff. They're getting on with their job, and that's what the actors and the writing does in this film. And, you know, it's not trying to lay out a story for the audience to follow. It really feels like you're in the middle of it and you're going through it, and things like people's private lives and stuff doesn't matter, because at that point in time they're just trying to survive. However, just because there aren't, you know, big battles or anything in this film doesn't mean it isn't incredibly intense, and there's a great deal of tension in the film, hugely. The music, I think, which is again done by Hans Zimmer, is excellent. It reminded me a lot of the music in certain points of The Dark Knight. I think anyone who's seen that film and has noticed the music in it will notice similarities to Dunkirk. But I don't mean that in a bad way. The music in this film really works. There isn't like a bombastic scores or anything. It's music that really helps build the tension. I keep saying that word tension, but this film was so intense. And not intense as in like, whoa, you know, look at that, like tension of, you know, like when the pilots are getting into dogfights and trying to line up their sights, when the men are trying to get on the ships. You know, you have this subtle music in the background that it just does a great job in making the stakes feel high, and, you know, just feeling like anything could happen at any moment, that anyone could die. And I think, you know, it's not in your face kind of music, and I think that's an excellent choice to go with. Hans Zimmer has done there, and Christopher Nolan, no doubt, to have a kind of less is more approach. And I've talked about tension quite a lot in this film, and in many ways it really is quite a suspense film. There were some scenes in this film that even, this sounds strange, but even kind of made it feel like a kind of horror film in a way, like the tension and the kind of psychologically as you're watching it, you know. I think an aspect of that in particular is the fact that you never actually see any German soldiers throughout the film. You see their gunfire, you see bullets, you know, you see the result of their actions, you see German planes, but you never actually see any German soldiers. Now, some people have said they weren't a fan of this decision because, you know, good war films humanise soldiers regardless of what side they're on. And while I definitely think that is a valid point, and good war films do that, I think this was intentional by Christopher Nolan because it kind of presents this unseen force that's coming down on the British troops, and to me that just makes it even more tense. You know, there's just this huge force that has the British troops surrounded on the beach that can strike at any moment, and is indeed periodically striking against them. And, you know, it makes the enemy feel like this inevitable threat that's coming down upon them. And I thought that was a really good choice. You know, as I say, I do really like films that humanise the enemy and show that, you know, even in wars that might seem just like World War II, you know, people are people, not everyone is evil. You know, there's good and bad on both sides. I'm a big fan of that in war films. But with Dunkirk, when it comes to the suspense bit, I feel like that was a really intelligent choice to go with. Speaking of the soundtrack, I'd also like to mention the sound used in Dunkirk, from the crack of rifle fire to the scream of planes as they turn away at the last minute to the explosions. I really recommend you see this in cinema, simply so you can hear the audio on great speakers, because I really felt like, you know, at least the cinema I was in, the audio was done really well. You know, as I say, as planes like screech and turn, it felt like they were above you, and, you know, the crack of gunfire was so sudden. I saw lots of people in the film jumping because, you know, as I say, this isn't a battle. You'll just have soldiers walking along, and then suddenly, you know, a sniper shot rings out or something. It's unexpected. And yeah, I mean, unless you've got a great sound system at home, I definitely recommend you check this out in cinema, if only for the sound. You know, a lot of people say films are worth checking out, you know, more bombastic films are worth seeing at the cinema on the big screen so you can see the big explosions. I think with Dunkirk, the reason you should see this at cinemas is to enjoy how well the audio syncs with the film. Not only the music, but also the effects of, you know, the plane engines roaring, the ships coming into port, you know, the crack of gunfire. I think they did an excellent job there, and it really helped the atmosphere, and, you know, it kind of really pulled you in. As I said earlier, the film shows the evacuation of Dunkirk from 3 different perspectives, and the way it's edited together, it really makes me want to see it a second time, because I feel like once you've seen it once, you know what's going to happen. Seeing it again and, you know, knowing where each thing stands in the sequence of events, I think you'll definitely get more out of it. I haven't seen it a second time yet, but I want to. And I think this will be the kind of film that is worth repeat viewings. You know, this is not a linear story. although it's not a complicated story, it's not linear in how it's told, but it's not done for its own sake, if you see what I mean. I think the way that, you know, whenever a big event happens, for a while there's chaos, and then as people come together try and piece together what happened in what event, the event begins to become clear to see. And I think that's what Nolan was going for in Dunkirk. So, you know, as well as seeing it once, I definitely will be interested to see it again, whether that be in the cinema or home viewing. But, you know, it's definitely the sort of film that is worth repeat viewings once you know the broad strokes. Now, Dunkirk is only a 12A, which is surprising for a war film. I mean, you know, Saving Private Ryan and the like are R-rated, and given the violence of war, you would think any war film worth its salt would be aimed at adults. Now, on paper, Dunkirk doesn't have anything that you couldn't really show a child. There isn't gore, there isn't an incredible amount of violence, there isn't bad language. However, this is a very gritty film. This does not glorify war or violence. This is one of those films, which I think the best films do, that show the consequence of violence and war and how detestable it is. As I was watching this film, I was thinking, I can't believe young men my own age went through this. I wouldn't know what to do with myself in such a situation. And I think in that regard it's very mature. You know, I kind of feel like if you did show a 12-year-old this film, they probably wouldn't really get it, I think. And I don't mean that in a bad way towards younger viewers. I just think kind of it's very introspective, the film, and makes you think about, you know, the people you love if you had to leave them to go to war. You know, like all great war films, it makes you think about that kind of thing, and there's no glory to it. And at the same time, it's not overly sensualised. There's no guts spilling out all over the place. You know, it just looks like a really dark, horrible thing to go through. And, you know, yeah, if anyone might be feeling put off by the fact, you know, they might be worried it's dumbed down, or that the true reality of war isn't shown in this film in order to appeal to a wider audience. That isn't the case. I think this film really does. This film is dark. Like, I kind of, in a good way, kind of felt depressed after seeing this film, you know. Something I noticed is my local cinema, I've been there hundreds of times, usually whenever a film ends, everyone stands up, begins to leave the screening room, and everyone's talking to each other, usually about the film, or, you know, just people start chatting as soon as the credits start rolling. However, something I noticed, and I think it's the first time it's ever happened, is from leaving the screening room and walking back downstairs and out to the parking lot, nobody said anything, really. You know, there was a few mutterings and stuff, but if they were thinking what I was thinking, that they were just reflecting on what it would be like to be in such a situation, you know. And I think that says a lot about the film, in that it really makes you think, and, you know, it's really stuck with me, and it's why I wanted to make this video sooner rather than later. I've been mulling it over ever since I saw it, and you know, that may seem like a strange thing to bring up, but I think that's a true testament to the emotional punch this film packs. So there you go, there are my initial thoughts on Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. As I say, I really don't kind of consider this a review in that sense, and obviously I really don't want to go too into the characters as such, because I don't want to spoil this for anyone. However, I really recommend you go and see this. As I say, compared to films like The Dark Knight or Inception, this film isn't perhaps as ambitious in its storytelling or its, you know, kind of eye candy of explosions and effects and such as those kind of films. However, I do think this is possibly Christopher Nolan's most kind of emotional film, the film that packs the most punch. It's a very simple story on the face of it. It's about evacuating soldiers, but I feel like it becomes so much more. And, you know, I really look forward to seeing how this kind of goes down in the future, you know, when people look back on great war films like Saving Private Ryan. You know, I look forward to seeing how Dunkirk ranks along with those titles, because it is very different to a lot of big war films, and I do wonder where it will sit in kind of pop culture, if you like. I also look forward to hearing different people's perspectives on it. As I say, this is set before the Americans joined the war, so I look forward to hearing American audiences' response from it, seeing a war film that isn't about American troops, because many of them are, because obviously they did play a large role in World War II. And Dunkirk, the event, I was vaguely aware of it before going into this film. Amongst French and British, and I think most Europeans, it's quite a well-known event of World War II. However, I would understand if obviously overseas it's not as well known. So yeah, I really look forward to seeing the response of it from film goers around the world. So far it's had really good reviews, and as I say, I really recommend you go out and see this. But I will say, don't go in expecting a huge war film, 2.5 hours of explosions and guts, and this a lot kind of tighter and more focused, which isn't to say war films can't be explosive and such, but this just isn't that. So yeah, go out and see it. As I say, I really look forward to hearing other people's responses to the film. So if you've seen it, please leave a comment and tell me what you thought. Did you like it? Did you not like it? If so, why not? I would really like to discuss this with people. So yeah, leave me a comment and tell me what you thought. Thanks for watching.